start recording yet either. There it goes, Alan. I see it. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so this is my first foray into this, so bear with me.
It's all right. We're learning too.
I've sat through several, but
Yeah, it's good to be on the other end every once in a while.
sure.
Well, Alan, what I'm going to do here in just a second when we're ready to go is I'm going to introduce you. You know, I'm going to say nice things about you. And
Always nice.
and then talk about a generosity game plan as being foundational to a building project and to ministry, period. It's a part of our disciple-making process. But then I won't talk very long. Then I'll turn it over to you, and I may interact with you as we go through this so that we can make it more of a dialogue instead of just a monologue, even though I'm not afraid for you to talk for an hour. Your outline and what you're giving them is going to keep their attention. They're going to wonder what's coming next. Excuse me.
You got to get that hairball out, man.
Hairball. So
I need to get rid of this webinar, go to webinar screen here on my right side of my screen.
Nobody can see that.
Okay, good. All right, that's cool.
That's a good thing. When you're doing a webinar, you can see that, but nobody that
Gotcha.
is in your presentation sees that screen. So
Gotcha.
good to know. But what I'm going to do, I'm recording on my end also right now. I'm going to go ahead and just mute myself, and I'll just be here until the end.
is the end 9:45 or 10 o'clock? Will it cut us off, Marty?
No, you guys, we're fine. We're going now. The scheduling for GoToWebinar is for the attendees, and since we don't have any,
Okay. Okay.
you know, we're good. So you guys can start when you're comfortable, and I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
Thank you, Marty.
All right, Marshall, hey, pray for us before we go, brother.
All right. Father, we ask you give Alan clarity of mind, that he would be able to speak very clearly with conciseness, that all the things that he has learned and been putting into action, he would bring to the forefront of his mind, that he'd be able to help pastors and others who are leading with these pastors to build a generosity plan and implement it in their ministry. We ask, Father, you'd use this many times over as we use the technology you provided to help church after church after church. And Lord, we'll give you the praise for it, the honor and the glory. Thank you for it. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Man, thank you.
Oh, you bet. Let's start. Good morning, folks. We're so glad you're joining us today on our webinar being presented by Alan Wilds, who is a generosity coach and capital stewardship consultant with Generis. And Generis is a company that's in the forefront of helping churches develop their stewardship plans. And, of course, part of that is raising money. This morning, Alan is going to talk about creating a generosity plan. Do you have one? And if you will listen for the next 45 minutes to an hour, we hope to be able to shed light on how you can develop your game plan for your ministry so that you can make disciples. And as you do, helping people steward the resources entrusted to them is a part of that ministry you have. And so, Alan, why don't you take it away? Thank you so much for giving your time to our company and to the folks who are listening.
Well, thank you, Marshall. Good morning. Looking forward to the next few minutes. I'm just going to dive right in, if that's all right, and just get started. But one of the things I just want to say to the people listening is one of my passions over the last several weeks, months, I could probably even say years, is that I'm a big fan of writing things down. I was sharing a story the other day. I used to be a high school baseball coach, and one of the first things that I did as a new head coach, first coaching job I got, was I wrote down my 5-year goals, and I needed that during some of those first tough seasons to keep the vision out there far enough where I could continue to work hard and work the plan. But I had an idea. I wrote things down, and that's probably the biggest thing I want to have a takeaway today, is for people to just write something down. So hopefully during this time, if you're listening and you're interested in this, hopefully you'll have a pen and some paper where you'll write some things down. This website is available to you. in a variety of different formats. You can go to Ministry Design Concepts website and be able to download it. But if you just want to take some notes as we talk, that'd be great. But in the fall of 2008, we had the world changed. Things shifted, and we in various parts of the country it was maybe a little later than the fall of 2008, maybe a little sooner, depending on where you were. But things changed in the fall of 2008, and the church was not exempt from it. The church, was certainly affected by that, because obviously our churches are dependent upon the giving of the people, and if the giving of the people changed, their habits changed, their lifestyles changed, and their giving habits were going to change. The world changed in the fall of 2008. But what I found is that the impact from that varies. Prior to the fall of 2008, I could ask churches, and how are you doing? How's your budget? How are you doing compared to last year? And in 2005, I found about 25% of the churches' giving was going up, about 50% were staying flat, and about 25% were going down. And actually, I have found that to still be the same. So the impact varies. It's an untrue statement to say that all churches' giving went down after the fall of 2008. But I don't think it's an unfair statement to say that all churches were impacted by the economic situation that happened beginning in probably earlier in 2008. What happened in that, what I found was in many churches, is that we went into reaction mode, which is the right thing to do. We have to respond. We can't just keep bumbling along. We've got to respond to the environment around us. And finance teams, they began to analyze their giving, and they began to analyze their spending, and unfortunately they began to have to make some pretty big cuts, and some churches radical cuts. And some of the cuts might have been necessary, might have been needed, and needed an impetus to do them, but some of them really got into some staff reductions, and that really began to affect the missions and the ministries of the church. And so we've kind of adjusted ourselves to a new normal, but I don't know that it has to be the new normal. I don't know that we have to be satisfied with it. And so what I've seen is that the hemorrhaging for most has stopped. At least the bleeding is now over, and now we've kind of readjusted things. But I think the paralyzing fear from all of that is now over. We're now, okay, it's over. The world is not going to end. Okay, how do we move forward from here? The ministry needs are still there. In fact, there's probably more ministry needs in our churches and in our communities now, but the churches are kind of in a downward spiral, and while in a situation where we would want to need and desire to be able to give more money away and to help more people, unfortunately we're on the downward spiral too as churches, and we're not able to give the money and the assistance and the aid that we would want to. I found that finance teams are really good stewards. I think a lot of finance teams in 2008, especially 2009 and 2010, they really got beaten up in our churches because they were seen as the bad guys. They were seen as the ones that were having, they're making the cuts, and they're not managing the money well, and they're, what are they doing? Why aren't, and I really felt like a lot of finance teams got the bad rap, and I have found that finance teams are really good stewards. You've got some of the most intelligent, financially savvy people on finance teams, and they are really good stewards. And so what I have found is that we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. And in the church that I've attended for the last many years and churches that I work in, I mean, their finance teams have gotten it down to where it's a bare bones budget in a lot of churches. And so either the spending has got to go down more, which means unfortunately more tough cuts, or the giving, the revenue, to use a secular term, the revenue has got to happen. So that has got to increase. Excuse me. So we need a proactive solution. I mean, we need to be able to think proactively. We need to what are we going to do? How are we going to work on this problem? How are we going to have our per capita giving go up? Because that's what's got to happen if we're going to be able to get back to doing the missions and the ministry and meeting the needs of our people in our own church and the people outside our walls in our community and our region and our world. We need a plan. I mean, we need a generosity game plan. As I mentioned, I'm a former high school and college baseball coach, and so I talk in terms of game plans and coaches and teams and games and strategies and those types of things. And I think most people can relate to that. And we need a generosity game plan. I found that most churches, they have ministry plans. They have things written down. It's not that churches are averse to writing things down. I mean, most churches have some type of written strategic plan for their missions, for their discipleship, for their evangelism, prayer ministry, children, youth, seniors, young adults, young marrieds, whatever it might be. They have at least some kind of a skeleton of a plan written down somewhere so they can follow along, so the staff and lay leaders and people can be all on the same page. But for whatever reason, most churches do not have an intentional strategy for stewardship, and I, for the life of me, do not understand that. I can't understand it. The definition of insanity, Marshall, is what? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you pastored, you know. I mean, if you continue to do the same things, you're going to get the same results typically. And so why won't churches write down a stewardship plan? But let me pause here and say, just because you write it down doesn't mean that it's going to happen. But I do know this, is that if you do write it down, you have a better chance of success. And so what I want to talk about are 5 focal points of a generosity game plan. There's a whole lot of meat to put on these bones, but I want to kind of get to the 5 basic focal points of the game plan. And so as you begin to, if you're listening and you're a pastor or you're a lay leader or a finance team member or a business administrator or whatever it might be, if your church does not have a generosity game plan, you need one. And you can try to convince me otherwise, you need one. You need to write one down, and you need to begin today if you don't have one. You may have a stewardship team already. You may have a generosity team already. You may be in a church where you have a generosity pastor or generosity ministry or stewardship ministry. If you do, that's great. That's wonderful. If you do not, you need to get one. If you do, you probably need to take a look at the structure and the organization of that team. What are the goals? What are the intentions? What are the tangibles? What are the deliverables of that generosity team or that stewardship team? But your team needs to have some version of these 5 focal points. And here they are: vision, communication, financials, discipleship, worship, and celebration. We want to celebrate generosity. So what I want to do here is go into each of these 5. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on each one, and going to give you some takeaways. I'm going to challenge you to write some things down. I'm going to challenge you to do some things before school gets out. School gets out at the end of May. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's being recorded on May the 2nd. So you've got about 3 weeks from this recording to be able to implement some of these practices. If you want to have some type of immediate change, then you need to do some of these things that I'm about to recommend. It doesn't mean your giving is going to double or anything like that, but you will see some positive upticks in your giving if you will do some of the things that I'm going to recommend. Some of these are short term, but I also want to lay the foundation here to make sure that anybody listening to this understands. This is not a get-rich-quick plan. This is not just about giving. This is about a culture. This is about changing a culture or accelerating a culture of generosity that already exists. This is taking a large freight, huge cruise liner and trying to turn it very, very slowly. It does not happen quickly. So if you're looking for a quick fix, this is probably not the webinar that you're going to get the most benefit from. If you're in ministry for the long haul, which I'm assuming you all are, if you're listening, if you're in it for the long haul and you want what's best for your church and you want what's best for your people and you want your people to experience and live a lifestyle of generosity and to be generous with every ounce of their being, then this is your strategy. So I just want to make sure I get that out of the way. Let's talk about vision. Vision, in my opinion, is one of the most overused, misunderstood, and abused words in our churches. We talk about vision, we talk about vision, we talk about vision, and we talk about God-inspired vision, and we talk about this. But I truly don't know that lay people really understand what the leaders are talking about, and I'm just about convinced after 13 years working with churches that I don't know that church leaders know what they're really talking about when they talk about vision. But I do know this. People give to a clear, compelling, and communicated vision. What is your church about? Where are we going? What is your vision statement? What is your church's vision statement? For me, a vision statement, and hopefully to you, is very different than a mission statement. The vision statement tells me where the church is going. Who are we, and where are we going? What are we all about? And if you don't know, if you can't give somebody the elevator speech of your vision statement, if you know what an elevator speech is, if you get on the floor on an elevator with somebody on the 15th floor of a building, by the time you get down to the first floor, they should understand what your vision for your church is and what your church is all about, and they should be excited about wanting to be a part of that vision. If your elevator speech is not clear and it's not compelling and you can't communicate it quickly, then it's probably not a very good vision statement. But what is your church's vision statement? And then I ask you the question, what is your church's mission statement? To me, a mission statement tells me how we're going to get to where the vision statement tells us where we're going. So the vision statement says where we're going. The mission statement tells me how we're going to get there. And this is where the generosity game plan comes underneath that. I have another question for you. Is your vision and your mission statement, are they facilitating life change? Is your vision compelling enough, and does it have feet? Is it going out? Is it going hands and feet? Is it going out and helping facilitate life change? It doesn't have to be outside your walls. It needs to be inside your walls as well. Are your people's lives being changed because of the missions and ministries of your church that are being held under the umbrella of the vision and mission statement of your church? Again, if your vision statement is not facilitating life change, you probably need to get a new one. Giving mirrors the way your church is achieving its vision and mission, either subconsciously or consciously. If your church is meeting and achieving the vision, people are going to give because they're excited. They see life change. If your vision is about changing lives, and your mission statement allows that vision statement to come to reality, and your mission statement has wonderful ways of helping facilitate life change, and you show your people the life change, people are going to give to it. That's tried, true, and proven. It's 100% foolproof guarantee. People will give to life change. People do not have a giving problem. They have a giving to your church problem. People are still benevolent. People are still giving. Did giving go down in 2009? Yes, it did. Did giving go up in 2010 from 2009? Yes, it did. Did giving go up in 2011 from 2010? Yes, it did. Giving is on track now in 2012 to be on par with pre-fall of 2008 giving. So people are still giving to organizations, but they're only giving to organizations, but they're being much more shrewd, and they're being much more careful, and they're being much more cautious of who they're giving to. And they need to make sure that the dollars that they're investing are being used wisely and are changing lives. So I would love for you, if you're listening, to write down 3 ways to cast or recast vision of your church before school gets out. I would encourage you to do that. I'm going to keep moving, but I would encourage you to write down 3 ways. You can do it in worship, writing, video, email, whatever it is. Small group blast announcement or Sunday school if you're a Sunday school church. Recast the vision or cast or recast the vision of your church 3 times before school gets out. Let's talk about communications. Marshall, before we do that, anything I missed there? Anything you want to add to the vision? I mean, you were a pastor for almost 20 years. I mean, vision was critical, yes?
Vision is critical. I would say when someone looks at their vision and it's just out of alignment with producing the life change that you're preaching to them, that you're teaching them, that the source of the vision is not their own imagination, but rest in God. And so pursuing Him and waiting on Him, for Him to inspire you and energize you with His vision for your ministry is key to making this happen, or else we end up with just a mechanical solution where it's man-made. And I believe the vision, and it's His ministry. We're partnering with Him, and we have to find the inspiration and energization of our ministry out of God, from Him. It's a personal thing. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage pastors to chase after God.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, our leaders, our pastors, have to be on their knees seeking God's counsel and seeking His wisdom and His direction for the church. And if we're not doing that, and If we're just sitting around a board table and just brainstorming and coming up with ideas on our own, then all that has to happen. But we need to be seeking God first.
Yes.
And I could not agree more. But we can have the best vision. We can have the best mission statement. We can have all kinds of wonderful things going on in our church that are facilitating life change and causing life change. But if we can't communicate that story effectively, it's not going to help the financial giving in your church. People have to be able to see it. So I ask you, what are the goals of your communication strategy in your church? I might even back up and ask another question. Do you have a written communication game plan? What are the goals? Is it just ad hoc? Is it just people just send stuff into the office manager, and the office manager then is responsible for taking that information and putting it in a newsletter or putting it in an email or whatever? Or are there defined channels of how we're going to communicate the goals and the life change and the missions and ministries of our church? So that's another conversation for another day and a whole other webinar with somebody who knows more about that than I do. But what are the goals of your communication strategy? In my opinion, the number one goal of your communication strategy should be to illustrate and celebrate life change. Tell the story. Show the story. Tell the stories. Whether it's, I know in the Methodist Church this season right now is confirmation season, where all the confirmands are going through ceremonies and services. We just had Easter. We've got baccalaureate coming up here for most churches, and they're going to celebrate their graduating seniors. What a wonderful opportunity to illustrate and celebrate the lives of those children and those youth, and to brag on your teachers, your Sunday school teachers, and your small group leaders, and your youth volunteers, and your youth pastors, and your staff that have helped create the environment that keeps these teenagers wanting to come back to church and wanting to be a part of youth group and wanting to go on mission trips, and teaching them the gospel, and teaching them how to go out and share the gospel, and teaching them to be, what a wonderful opportunity to celebrate those kids and their lives and their parents, and the culture that your church is fostering this type of kid to go out into the world and be a beacon for Christ. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity. So I just served one up for you on a tee right there. I mean, use that, celebrate that, and connect the giving. If you're not paying a staff member, if you don't have a full-time staff member, or at least a part-time staff member that's working with youth ministries typically struggle. That's why most churches, no matter how big or small, at least have a part-time paid youth person, because they know how important it is. And connect the dots. Share with your people that the people you're giving, the giving of your dollars allows us to pay our staff member, which allows him or her to be able to create and foster environments that are teaching our youth to go out and be beacons for Christ. There's a direct correlation between those kids' lives being changed and the dollars that the people are sitting in the pews or in the chairs that they're giving. There's a direct connection right there. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because that's where we're talking about celebration, but the number one goal of communications is to illustrate and celebrate life change. And why is that? Because people give to life change. I mean, that's what we give to. I was doing a similar presentation at an African American church a number of weeks ago now, and I asked a question: does anyone in here give to organizations other than your church? And almost every single person raised their hand or nodded yes. And I just randomly picked on one guy, and I just said, "Sir," I said, "tell me an organization you give to, and tell me why." And he said, "I give to the United Negro College Fund." And I said, "Okay, why do you do that?" He says, "Because without the United Negro College Fund, I never would have went to college. That fund, that organization changed my life. It changed the course of my life, and it changed the course of my children's life, and it changed the course of my grandchildren's life." I mean, I wanted to give right then. I wanted to write a check. I mean, he believed, and I said, "So you believe in the organization?" He kind of laughed. He kind of chuckled. He's like, "Well, yeah." And I said, "But how do you know that they're still doing that?" He says, "Because they tell me. They show me. They show me the other kids they're doing the same thing for them." The United Negro College Fund is changing lives. So is our church changing lives? Is your church changing lives? If it is, then you need to show people, and you need to tell them what's going on. People want to see the ROI. They want to see the return on the investment. I mean, we do not, I do not, Marshall, you do not. We do not invest money in organizations that we do not feel confident that the return on the investment of our dollars is going to be high. We just don't.
Yep.
If you do, then you're not being a very good steward of the dollars that God has given you. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
So people want to see the ROI, but for some reason we don't think in our churches that we can talk like that we can show the return on investment. People think that that's patting ourselves on the back and we're being pompous and we're being too narcissistic. No, that depends on the heart of the person who's telling that story, and it depends on the heart of the people who are doing the work. So, what are the tools? What are the communication tools? Your church probably has any or all of these, and they're in no particular order. But well, I guess they are. Print is the foundation, and then from that it kind of changes. But if you're not communicating through any, at least 3 of these channels, then you're missing out. And your people are on Facebook. I don't care what kind of church you have. I don't care where you're located. I don't care what the age demographic of your church is. Over at probably, I'm going to go out on a limb. I have nothing to back this up, but I would venture to say that 50% of your families are on Facebook. If you're not using Facebook to communicate the ministry and the mission of your church, you're missing a golden opportunity, and it's free. It's free. It does not cost a dime. So that's just my plug for Facebook. But blogging, pastors, if you're not blogging, you need to. People will read it. You may not think you have anything to say. You do, and they will read it. Twitter may be a little bit out there for some of you, but if you're not using email, email is still the #1 form of electronic communication, still the #1 most effective form of electronic communication. When's the last time, pastors and lay leaders that are listening, when's the last time you updated your email distribution list? If you haven't done that in the last 3 months, you probably need to do it again. But there are all kinds of tools out there. I mean, I could talk to churches about communication strategies, especially as it pertains to generosity. That's a whole nother hour, gosh, probably at Marshall, a series, a three-part series on communications, just to dive into all the details of that and the nuts and bolts. But for time's sake, we're going to move on. But I'm going to challenge you, if you're listening, what are 3 immediate adjustments in telling the story that you can do before school gets out? Write down 3 things you can do in telling the story before school gets out. I already gave, if your church does confirmation, you got one. If you just had a baptism opportunity in your church, there's another one. You just had Easter. You're getting ready to have graduation. You've got youth. You've got summer activities coming up. If you want to promote Vacation Bible School, go back and tell some life change stories from last year's Bible School and promoting Bible School for this year. And I mean, what else, Marshall? Was there? I mean, I just gave everybody 5. It's pretty simple if you just sit down and think about it, right?
I think you covered it. Yes.
All right. Financial challenges and wins. Kind of an interesting topic. Now this starts to get a little controversial for people, but I'm gonna dive in. We're gonna foray into this and see what people have to say. Numbers can be confusing. They can confuse. I've noticed that smaller churches like to talk in terms of percentages, and larger churches like to talk in terms of numbers. Is that right, Marshall? When you
I would
started,
think so. Yes. Yes.
You were probably in a smaller church, and you like to talk about the percentage of your families that were involved, right?
Yes.
Because 95% of 75 families sounds a whole lot better than saying 70 families attended. But if you're a mega church and you're worshiping with 8,000 people on a weekend, you like to talk in terms of numbers and not in terms of percentages. So they can be confusing. I know a lot of accountants, and I've learned that we can probably make numbers do and say pretty much whatever we want to if we're clever enough. But that's not the point here. We're not trying to be clever. We're just trying to be real. Numbers can clarify if you use them properly, and there's two numbers particularly in most churches that can clarify, and they speak volumes, and they speak clearly, and they do not lie. One is attendance. How many people are coming to your church? If you're not growing, if your attendance is not going up, then there's something going on. I don't know. There's a plethora of things that could be happening, but attendance numbers do not lie. Giving numbers do not lie. Attendance and giving do not lie, and they are connected. If people are not sitting in worship on a Sunday or a weekend, they typically do not give. But numbers can help you tell the story. They can help you tell your story. Here's where it gets controversial, Marshall. Does the senior pastor in your church know what people give?
Yes, that's controversial.
And I'm going to answer that question with an absolute, without a doubt, positively, yes, they should. But that is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother webinar. I would love to do that one. But I would love to talk about that one. But let's keep talking about it. Should they know? Yes, and here's a simple reason why. Giving patterns tell a lot about people's lives. Giving patterns tell a lot about people's lives. And let me illustrate that. If there's someone in your church that has been giving monthly for 15 years, and they haven't missed not one time in 15 years. They get it done. Whether they're on vacation or whatever, they make sure that they give every month. And then 2 months go by and they don't give. My question to you, Marshall, with your pastor hat on, is would you want to know that?
Yes, I find it interesting, Alan, that we disciple people and shepherd them in every area of their life, but when we get to the part of their stewardship that deals with their money, we have reasoned, and I believe wrongly, that we back away from that and we're actually harming them by not helping them in this area, and we really have to know. Secondly, to hold the care of your flock, your church family as a whole, if you have people who quit giving, you really need to know why they quit or why they cut back for the health of their family and their spiritual lives, but also for the whole church, because it does affect everyone.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. And you're not necessarily worried in this particular scenario how much they're giving. You just need to know that they've stopped giving. And it gives you an opportunity to reach out to them and pastor them, minister to them, and you're not calling them to say, hey, it was brought to my attention that y'all quit giving. What's going on? You know, why aren't you? We need your money. Why aren't you giving your money? I mean, obviously, that's ridiculous. That's not why we're making the phone call. Something has happened in their lives. Something has changed. Something is going on. And if you make a phone call and just say, hey, I just thought I was thinking about y'all, and I thought I'd give you a call and just see what's going on. Maybe we could connect for lunch or a cup of coffee or something. Just hadn't had a chance to talk with y'all in a little while. Well, I see you at church, but we just hadn't had a chance to have a conversation. We'd love to connect. And if you probably before you get off the phone, they're going to tell you what's going on, and you get a chance to minister to them. And it has nothing to do with giving and getting their giving back on path. That's just not the point. You get a chance to be their pastor. You get a chance to love on them. I mean, knowing people's giving patterns can help the pastor be a better pastor. And it's not that you're trying to be nosy and knowing what they're giving. You need to know they're giving. At minimum, a pastor needs to have a relationship with their business administrator or treasurer or whoever it is, that you can know giving trends and giving patterns, if nothing else. You don't necessarily need to know dollars and cents. If that's where you want to start, that's fine. But you at least need to know trends and patterns. Numbers matter. Sometimes we get caught way too much in the numbers game. We try to beat our chest when our attendance is so and so, and compared to the national averages, and our giving is No, I'm not talking about that. But numbers do matter, but only if you use them, and only if you use them in the right way. So here's my takeaway from this. If you're listening and you're a pastor, schedule an appointment with your financial administrator to set up a relationship and have a conversation that at a minimum you want to know the giving patterns of your people. If there's a change in giving, then you want to know about it. And let me go back and say, if giving goes up, if somebody's been giving monthly and they've been giving $1,000 a month for 15 years and now they're giving $1,500 a month regularly, then obviously something good has happened in their lives. And you get a chance to celebrate with them. So you make the phone call on behalf of that too. And that's a pastor phone call as well, but that one's on the good side. What's going on? I'd love to hear what's going on in your lives. And within 5 minutes, you probably know they got a raise or they got a new job or whatever it is that you didn't know about, and you get a chance to celebrate and have fun with them. So it's not always on the bad side. It can be on the good side as well. But schedule that appointment with your financial administrator, treasurer, business administrator, who it is. Let's talk about discipleship and about teaching. There are 38 parables in the Bible. Well, some people argue that number, but I go with 38. 18 of them deal with resources and how to manage them. So I'm going to go out on a limb, Marshall, and say that if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for the rest of us.
Yes.
I mean, he spent, of the recorded parables, and there's probably more than that, but of the recorded parables, 18 of them deal with resources and how to take care of them. Jesus knew how important money and financial resources are in our lives, how important they are to us. He also knew that you need them in order to do the ministry that you're trying to do. He knew that. And that's why he taught on it so much, and that's why the authors of the Gospels wrote those down, is because I can just only imagine that Jesus would get probably between the hypocrisy of the establishment that he got so angry about and the whole giving thing. Those were the two things that he got him riled up the most of anything else, or those two subjects, and that's why they wrote them down. And the culture that we live in is just permeates our lives on a daily basis through advertising and all the different media. It's relentless. The culture is relentless with the message, and the message is about money. Yesterday, I got home from being gone on a couple of days, and there were no less than 3 envelopes wanting me to take out and get a credit card. No less than 3. And there's a reason that they keep sending those things. Right, Marshall?
Yeah,
obviously they. Yes.
Yes.
Because they work. Some people are using them. So the culture is relentless with the message and the messaging about money. And so my question is should the church be relentless with the Bible's message about money? And boy, that's some tough talk right there, Marshall. That's making some people listening kind of nervous right there. Relentless. I already hear from my people when I do one stewardship message, and I'm shaking their hands as they walk out the front door. Pastor, seems like all we talk about is money. Why'd you do that today? Seems like all we're talking about around here is money. And you talk about, I had a pastor tell me for real, he intentionally went a whole calendar year without teaching, without a single stewardship sermon. He would weave it in, but he did not have one sermon that had stewardship or giving or money or whatever in the title. And the next year when he started preaching on money, he had several people come up to him and say, seems like all you preach about is money, Pastor. And he intentionally did not preach about it for 52 straight weeks. And the very first Sunday that he did it after that year, he got 2 or 3 people saying, seems like all you preach about and talk about is money. So there are going to be people in your church who do not want to hear the message about money. I am convinced there are people in every church that were born mad, and they are going to die mad. And it does not matter what you do or what you say that it's going to change their minds. Here's another statement that I make. I ask pastors this all the time. Pastors, have you ever, Marshall, I'll ask you, Pastor Marshall, have you ever been able to make every single person happy in your church?
No, I have not, and no, you shouldn't try. As you were talking, Alan, I was thinking, having pastored for the majority of my adult life, I'm trying to please Christ. I have his directions and directives to me written out in front of me so that I can understand it from the Bible's message to me. And when I go to prepare to preach, I can't be afraid of men. I've got to figure out and understand in my relationship with Christ, with God, what he would have me to say. Mm-hmm. And you have to have courage to speak the message of the Bible and to do so in a right way, because you're always going to have people who are unhappy with you. I've read statistics that said 10% of every church is unhappy with its senior pastor. Don't be surprised if you get pushback, kickback at you verbally with what you preached.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. And so when I asked that question, I asked the question I just asked you, have you ever been able to make everybody happy in your church? And, of course, the obvious answer is no. Then I said, then shouldn't, if you know that you can't make everybody happy, then shouldn't we say and teach what we know is biblically right? Regardless of what, if you know you're not going to make everybody happy no matter what, then why not teach the truth? Teach the truth, and then you can sleep well at night.
That's right.
Teach the truth. Now, I'm going back off of pastors. Pastors, I know it's a controversial subject. I know it's not the easiest subject in the world to talk about. It is an extremely personal subject. I've had pastors tell me they'd rather counsel their families on their sex lives than they would about their money. It is an extremely personal subject. It is not easy to talk about. It is not easy to do. I totally and completely understand that. I'm very passionate about this subject, but I know, if not you, pastor, if you don't teach your people, then who is?
Well, I'm afraid they're going to be left with the culture.
The culture, that's exactly right.
Giving them the wrong message.
Exactly. If you believe that the church and the Bible should be the foundation of how your people manage and take care of their money, if pastors, leaders, if y'all believe that, then you have to teach it, because nobody else is going to do it. The culture is going to do it. They are doing it, and they are doing it well. From their perspective, they are doing it well. So my question is, are we relentless? Are we relentless? Couple of quotes. Maya Angelou. Education helps one's case cease being intimidated by strange situations. The offering time should not be an intimidating time for your people. If they're intimidated because the offering is a strange situation, that's on us. It's on us to teach our people enough and well enough to where the offering time certainly should not be intimidating, and it should certainly not be strange. In fact, it should be something that we anticipate and that we look forward to. We have to teach our people. I love this quote. I'm not real sure who George Santayana is. I read a little bit about him, but I just came across the quote. So I'm not some great big poet and philosopher here. But a child educated only at school is an uneducated child. And I think you could put, a teenager, and you can put an adult. And an adult educated only by the culture is an uneducated adult. We've put too much responsibility on our schools. We've put too much responsibility. I think we put too much responsibility on our people as leaders. I think we assume that our people are more spiritually mature than they actually are. We use that. We don't want to be elementary. We don't want to talk down to them. We don't want to dumb it down, if you will, because we don't want to insult people's intelligence. I would say go ahead and insult their intelligence, because odds are half the people in the room are not real sure about the particular subject that you're talking about. And I'm not just talking about money here. I'm talking about all facets of our faith and how we go about growing closer to God. Why are we afraid to teach our children and our people at church? We can't just entertain them. We can't just have a wonderful worship service that has great music and wonderful musicians and a talented speaker and a good message, and then have our people go home and check that off as something that we've done this week. We have to teach. It doesn't have to be boring, and we don't have to bang people over the head, but we have to teach our people. So, 2 ways to teach biblical stewardship before school lets out. Again, I don't know when you're listening to this, so you may need to change. You may be listening to this in June or July of this year. So instead of before school lets out, maybe before school starts, or whatever it is, whatever your milestone is. But don't say before the year ends. If it's November and you're listening to this, then yes, say before the year ends. But do something within about 6 weeks. 2 ways to teach biblical stewardship before school lets out. One in worship and one in a small group setting, whether that's life groups or community groups or small groups, or whether that's Sunday school, and not just for your adults, but for your youth and for your children. Look for 2 ways to teach biblical stewardship before it gets out. And pastors, if you want to talk to me about this and you want me to guide you through all of these types of these little 2 ways I'm talking about, my contact information is coming at the end, and you feel free to reach out to me, and I'll have a conversation with you and walk you through that very easily. Let's talk about the final point, worship and celebration. 52, Marshall, what's the significance of this number?
Weeks in a year.
There's 52 weeks in a year. So as it pertains to our conversation here, church and giving, what is the significance of 52? It is the amount of times we see 70% of our people as a captive audience. Typically, most churches see 70% of their people on any given Sunday or weekend. They see 70% of their people, and they're a captive audience, and they come to you. You don't even have to go to them. They come to you. Nonprofits spend thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes even hundreds, maybe not hundreds, but 100,000 to see 70% of their donors in person one time a year. So why do they do that? They do that because they need and want and know the importance of telling their story. They want to tell their story to their donor base. They know that if they expect people to invest in their ministry, they need to show their donors how lives are being changed. So my question to you, if you're listening, is are you telling your story in worship? There's all other ways you can do it. You can do it in writing. You can do it through email, video, YouTube, Vimeo, all those other ways. And you probably, your website, and you probably should be doing it there. But are you telling your story in worship? You cultivate what you celebrate. If you want to, if you celebrate generosity, you're going to cultivate generosity. If you model generosity, you're going to have people being more generous. Do not assume that your people know what it means to be generous. And I'm not just talking about dollars here. I'm talking about leading a generous lifestyle. Pastors, if you want your people to understand about being generous with their dollars, tell them how much you give. You don't have to tell them how many dollars you give, but tell them what percentage you give. Do you tithe? What's your church's definition of tithing? And do you meet and exceed that your church's definition of tithing? Yeah, if you don't, you should. Your people are the people will not outrun the pace of the leader. People being led will not run in front of the leader. If the leader's running at 20 miles an hour, your fastest person following you is going to run at 19 miles an hour. They are not going to run at 21 miles an hour. It's just not going to happen. So if you expect your people to tithe, by your church's definition of tithing, you need to make sure you're doing it, and you need to tell them that you're doing it. And if you really want to make an impact, bring your spouse up on stage and talk to them about how y'all determine your percentage, or how you determine how much you're going to give. Show them that you're real. Show them that you're human. Show them that you're a couple and that you all have these languages. Talk to them about how you start on your knees in prayer. If you don't start on your knees in prayer, obviously you should. But talk to them. Teach your people. Show them. You will cultivate what you celebrate. Is your offering time an integral component of worship? I visited a church the other day, and we finished singing a song, and we sat down. The ushers came down. The plates were given to them. They turned around and just started passing the plates, and not one word was spoken. Not a word. You believe that, Marshall?
Yes, I see it done.
Not one word. I mean, my head just went down. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. The minute to 2 minutes before the offering is received, and notice I said received, Marshall, and not collected. Yep. You don't collect an offering. An offering is given. An offering is given. You don't collect the offering. You receive the offering. But is your offering time an integral component of worship? Those 2 to 3 minutes prior to the offering being received is just so critical. I said, Pastor, what are you doing in those 2 minutes? Well, I say a prayer and I do those things. And I'm like, I hear you. I'm glad that you say a prayer and you talk about generosity in your prayer. But this sounds really, really bad. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't listen to the prayers. But if their eyes are open and they're looking at you and you're telling the story, they're going to pay attention. I know that sounds awful, but that's just fact of life. So what are you saying in those 2 minutes? How often do you connect life change that happens in your church to the financial generosity of your people? Is there something that just happened in your church that your church did, whether it was an outreach or a homeless shelter or a mission trip or whatever it was, And did your operating budget support fully or partially that particular ministry? If the operating budget paid for that ministry, then you need to thank the people in the pews for being so generous with the dollars that they gave. They give on every Sunday morning, that those dollars that they give is being transferred and translated into actual ministry that is actually changing lives. You need to say those words. Do not assume. Do not assume. One of the very few, my dad was a high school basketball coach for almost 40 years in the state of Georgia. And I was a water boy from the time I was 5 years old all the way up till I played for him. I played 4 years of high school basketball for him. I listened to a bunch of halftime speeches, Marshall, a bunch of them. The only halftime speech I remember out of, it has to be hundreds, possibly even into over 1,000 halftime speeches that I heard my dad do. And some of them, most of them were always entertaining, trust me. But the only one that I remember was when I walked in. This is in the days of chalkboards. No more, there weren't whiteboards at the time, chalkboards. And I walked in, and he had the word assume written in huge 3-foot letters all the way across this chalkboard. And he broke down what happens when you assume. And if you're listening and you want me to break that down for you, call me later and I'll tell you. But don't assume that your people understand how the dollars that they're giving is being translated into life, into life change. Because most people in the pews, they think that their dollars are paying for your salary and the salaries of the staff, the air conditioning, the heat, the paint, the roof, and maybe a little bit of mission work. That's all they think that their dollars are doing.
Yep.
And if you don't believe me, ask them. That's what they'll tell you. You cultivate what you celebrate. All right, now, takeaway. One way to adjust the offering time before school gets out, and one way to publicly celebrate life change and connect it to the generosity of the congregation. Pastors, I encourage you to do one or more of those things, but at least one of those. All right, Alan, this sounds great, man. In some ways, Alan, it sounds kind of overwhelming. How do we do this? What does this look like? Well, you got to get it. You got to get busy. There's got to be some implementation of some of these things. You can't do it all at once. You can't even do all 5 components maybe at once, all of them, but you might be able to do one component from each of the 5. You need help. You need a team. Pastors, you cannot nor should you do this by yourself, and you shouldn't put all of this on your staff, because your staff is already, typically most staffs are overworked and underpaid as it is. Does your staff need to be involved in this and be a critical component of the generosity team? Absolutely. Even if you are an elder-led, very staff-driven church, you still need lay people on your generosity team. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to say thank you. There's my contact information. If anybody's listening and would like to track me down, you've got multiple ways to find me. But the thing that I would just say to you in closing is just write something down and start. Just begin. And if you don't know where to begin, you don't know how to do it, call me. I'll get you started.
Let me interject 2 things Alan has hit on that resonates with me and kind of put some closing thoughts in your mind. First off, ministry is a team sport. What he said about building teams and not trying to be the Lone Ranger, but to cultivate teams who buy into your value system, your mission of your church, and your vision. And so you have to be a leader of men, so to speak, of people, in order to build those teams, and there's work to be done on your part as a pastor to do so. Secondly, what he said about you cultivate what you celebrate. To be able to share with people, and I'll give you a personal story of how what Alan says works. My wife and I got burdened for the marriages in our church, and so we decided to start couples retreats once a year. We took them to very nice places where they would never be able to afford it perhaps on their own. We got special rates and put together special speakers, special music, special program, places to dine, activities to do, took them to a nice resort area. But I stood up after the first or second year where we had clearly communicated to our church family what we were trying to do with these retreats and how we were trying to strengthen the husband and wife in their relationship with Christ and with each other and with their children and their in-laws and with other believers in the church, and the wonderfulness that comes about as they give themselves and commit themselves to God and His way of being married. And as I collected testimonials from people, one Sunday we were announcing, but we did promotions at our church, and promoting the couples retreat, and gave testimony of the impact and explained what we were doing and why. And walking into my office on following Monday morning was a couple who was not a part of our church. Matter of fact, they weren't a part of our community. Their children attended our church, and they were from another state. And they handed me a check in an envelope and said, "We know you're doing your couples retreat in February. We've heard and seen the changed lives. We'd like to pay for the entire retreat."
Ooh.
They handed me a check for thousands of dollars, and we were able to take over 100 couples out of our church for 3 days and 2 nights to a resort that was in the mountain. You could see mountains from 3 different states from where we were, sitting on a lake in a beautiful resort setting with a 4-star restaurant attached to the resort, all expenses paid, had the finest of everything from worship and programs. We took the entire weekend. It was a centerpiece. What motivated that was they understood the mission, our values, and the changed lives it had been producing over the last 2.5, 3 years. And they had the capability and walked in and paid for the whole thing. They wanted to be a part of what God was doing. And so, folks, if you don't have a plan, you haven't discerned what God's plan is, the ministry plan for your church. You need to get on your knees before God. You need to begin pouring yourself into research and study and listening so that you can benefit and your people will benefit from your leadership. Well, that's about all we have time for today. Alan, thank you so much for giving yourself to this. Folks, I handpicked Alan to speak on the generosity plan in your church, and now you see why. He is a gifted coach and a godly man and a part of the Generis team that is having impact on churches around the country. Please give him a call. Set up a relationship with him. Let him help you develop your generosity plan in your church. And as we talk about construction from a ministry perspective, that the generosity culture of your church is foundational for the capital stewardship program that you will run in your church connected to your building program. Thank you so much for listening. Lord bless you.